The day had begun like any other, with the sun casting its golden hues over the city, promising the gentle warmth of spring. Returning from work, I found the package, an unassuming brown parcel tied with twine, its presence an enigma against the backdrop of my mundane life. Intrigued and somewhat cautious, I brought it inside, the weight of the unknown heavy in my hands. Inside was a locket, its silver surface tarnished by time, adorned with intricate engravings that seemed to whisper secrets of a bygone era. Accompanying it was a letter, its edges worn, the paper thin as parchment. Breaking the seal, I unfolded the letter, and the looping script danced before my eyes, telling a tale that seemed too fantastical to be true. It spoke of a curse, a legacy of sorrow that had plagued a family for generations, and of the locket, a vessel for a tormented soul seeking release. The rational part of me dismissed the story as the product of a bygone age of superstition. Yet a deeper, inexplicable part was drawn to the mystery it presented. The letter beseeched the bearer to return the locket to its rightful place, to a grave lost to time, in order to break the cycle of tragedy that had ensnared its owners. It was a plea, a call to action that I found myself unable to ignore. The nights that followed were marked by a subtle shift in the atmosphere of my apartment. It began with the shadows, which seemed to linger longer, stretching and twisting in the corners of my vision. The air would occasionally grow cold, a chill that seeped into my bones, leaving me shivering despite the warmth of the season. Objects began to move, ever so slightly, from where I had placed them. A book left on the table would find its way to the floor, its pages fluttering as if caught in a breeze that did not exist. The locket, too, seemed to possess a will of its own, disappearing and reappearing in places I was certain I had not left it. Whispers filled the silence of the night, a murmuring that seemed to echo from the walls themselves. They were indistinct, a language of emotion rather than words, conveying feelings of despair and longing. I would wake from restless sleep, the remnants of dreams filled with visions of a time and place I had never known, haunted by the presence of a figure cloaked in shadows, their features obscured, but their sorrow palpable. The culmination of these occurrences came one evening as I sat reading by the light of a lamp. The room grew inexplicably cold, the air charged with a tension that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. The locket, lying on the table before me, began to vibrate, a low hum that filled the room with its resonance. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped, leaving behind a silence that was oppressive in its weight, driven by a need to understand the forces I had unwittingly unleashed. I delved into the history of the locket. My research led me to tales of a family cursed by their own hubris, their fall from grace marked by tragedy and loss. The locket, it seemed, was central to this tale, a repository for the grief and rage of a spirit wronged by fate and bound to the mortal realm. The manifestations grew more pronounced, more aggressive. I would find marks on my skin, scratches that appeared overnight, with no logical explanation for their presence. The whispers turned to voices, a cacophony of anguish that seemed to plead for release, for an end to an eternal suffering. It was in this maelstrom of the supernatural that I found myself caught, a prisoner in my own home, haunted by a presence that refused to be ignored. The locket was the key, the catalyst for the haunting that had enveloped me, and it was to the locket that I turned in my search for answers, for a way to break the cycle of sorrow that had claimed so many before me. The story of my encounter with the supernatural is far from over, each day bringing new challenges, new horrors. But it is here, in the telling of the tale, that I find a semblance of power, a way to combat the shadows that seek to consume me. The journey ahead is fraught with danger, with the potential for loss greater than I had ever imagined. But it is a path I must walk, armed with the knowledge that the darkness holds not just fear, but also the key to my salvation. The weight of the haunting grew unbearable. The once safe haven of my home, now a prison of whispers and shadows. My days were consumed with research, poring over ancient texts and consulting with those few experts on the supernatural who did not dismiss my experiences outright. Their advice varied, but all pointed towards a singular conclusion. The entity bound to the locket required release. But such an act carried risks that chilled me to the core. Determined, I prepared for a ritual, one that promised to sever the ties binding the spirit to the locket and to this plane of existence. The preparation was meticulous. Each item gathered with care, a circle of salt to protect, candles to light the darkness, and an incantation that would, hopefully, grant peace to the restless soul. The night of the ritual was one of oppressive silence, the air thick with anticipation. As I began the incantation, the temperature dropped, breath visible in the candlelight. The whispers grew into screams, a tempest of sound that threatened to overwhelm me. And then, from the shadows, it emerged, a figure, its form blurred and shifting, eyes alight with a malevolent fire. The ritual was a battle of wills, the entity lashing out with a force that sent the candles flickering, the salt line eroding beneath an unseen assault. But I held firm, the words of the incantation my shield against the darkness. And then, with a final, ear-splitting cry, it was over. The figure dissipated, the locket fell silent, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, peace reigned. But the peace was fleeting. Days later, the locket, which I had locked away, vanished. In its place, a new horror emerged. Reflections and mirrors began to warp, showing not my own image but that of the entity. Its visage twisted in rage. Sleep brought no respite, only nightmares of a darkness so deep it threatened to swallow me whole. The climax came one stormy night when the barriers between worlds thinned. The entity returned, not as a shadow or a whisper, but as a physical force. Doors slammed, windows shattered, and the air grew thick with the stench of decay. In the eye of this supernatural storm, the entity made its desires known. It sought not release, but revenge. Revenge on those who had bound it, and now, on me, for daring to believe I could end its torment. I fought with every ounce of strength, every piece of knowledge I had acquired. The battle raged through the night, a test of endurance that left my apartment a battleground and my spirit nearly broken. As dawn broke, the entity receded, but the victory was hollow. The locket remained gone, but the haunting did not cease. Instead, it evolved, becoming something more sinister, more cunning. In the aftermath, I was left to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. Friends and family, kept at bay by my obsession, returned with cautious support, their eyes filled with questions I had no answers for. The apartment, once a place of comfort, now held too many shadows, too many memories of the darkness I had battled. And then, the final blow, the locket reappeared, not in my apartment, but in a photograph taken by a friend, clear as day among my belongings. Its return was impossible, yet undeniable. With it, the realization that the entity was not gone but had changed. Its connection to me stronger than ever.